When I was planning out this series, I had one big fear. I feared that when taking a look at Super Mario Galaxy with the analytics of a microscope equivalent in power to the Hubble Space Telescope, the cold and unemotional viewpoint I planned to take would destroy any admiration I had for what I regard as one of my favorite games of all time. I was afraid that I would take a game I love and teach myself to hate it. Because I've gone back and I've played games again that I only played as a kid, and let me tell you, a lot of those do not hold up. Sonic Heroes, for example, is a complete mess, and playing it feels like you're trying to balance a jar on your head while you're ice skating. I did not want to inadvertently give Super Mario Galaxy the Sonic Heroes treatment while revisiting it. I did play the whole game again when the 3D All-Stars collection came out, and I loved it then, but I could easily have still been in a state of nostalgia-driven blindness by playing a favorite childhood game again with modern controls and glorious 1080p graphics. So the idea that Super Mario Galaxy might not be as good as I remembered it positioned itself with strong viability in my mind as I moved forward to work on this series. However, I am happy to report that this has not happened so far. There's definitely points of criticism I have for the game now that I didn't before, but so far those have been minor, and I think it speaks more to how closely I've been analyzing it, rather than mistakes on behalf of the game designers. In fact, in many areas, Super Mario Galaxy is even better than I remember, and I'm able to discover and articulate why in ways I would have never been able to as a child. However, it's only been up to this point where Super Mario Galaxy has either met or exceeded my expectations of it, because here we arrive at the Freezeflame Galaxy. The Freezeflame Galaxy has long lingered in my mind as one of the better courses in Super Mario Galaxy. I have very fond memories of it for introducing things like ice skating, bringing back the Fire Flower, and providing a delicious combination of lava level and ice level. But these are the things I remember it for, not necessarily the things that it actually did. It was these fond memories of the Freezeflame Galaxy that caused me to place it at number 7 in my video on the top 10 snow levels in all of gaming. That's some high praise. That's 3 spots above the Snow Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey, and 1 spot below Cool Mountain from Super Mario 64, both of which exemplify the ideal snow level for both modern and classic 3D platformers, respectfully. I placed the Freezeflame Galaxy on this list not having played it since the release of Super Mario 3D All-Stars over 3 years before, but I remembered so many good things about it, of course it deserved to be on this list. So I wrote up the list, recorded the video, and then sat down a few days later to capture some footage of the Freezeflame Galaxy to use as B-roll. But while I was playing through it again, a horrible, ugly, unwanted thought came up in my mind. Oh no, this isn't that good. However, it was too late. I couldn't change up my list at that point. It would involve recording the entire video again, as I said the number of each level in the list, so I couldn't just move things around freely. I wanted to get the video posted at least a few days before Christmas to act as a de facto Christmas special for my channel. So I had my list and I had to stick with it, even if I didn't fully believe in it. And thank God I pushed through and got that video out when I did, because at the time I'm recording this, it's garnered a whopping 186 views. Wow! That's more people that can fit on the average double-decker bus. I bought a Mario beanie for that video, and it was well worth it. I bet they're polishing up my gold play button as we speak. So the resounding success of this video aside, when I went into the series, I had a feeling that the Freezeflame Galaxy would pose a problem for me. Would I find something worse than I had when capturing footage for that top 10 list? Or was I misjudging it? And would it live up to those warm childhood memories I had of it from all those years ago? But beyond all, would it still be worthy of being in a list of the top 10 snow levels of all time? At the end of this video, I will give you my final list. But first, it's time to take a look at the Freezeflame Galaxy and find out just what makes it whatever it is. The first mission of the galaxy is the frozen peak of Baron Burr. I'd love to believe that this is a reference to Aaron Burr, but I don't think a team of game developers in Japan in the mid-2000s had the third vice president of the United States on their minds. The level starts out on a high note with the introduction of ice skating. Now, snow levels are one of my favorite environments for a game, hence that top 10 list. But unfortunately, snow levels often act as a double-edged sword, frequently covering the environments in ice. Slippery surfaces are something I vehemently do not like, because they take control away from the player. The Freezeflame Galaxy is similar to a lot of the snow-themed levels, and then it incorporates a lot of icy surfaces. However, the ice skating mechanic it brings offers a graceful solution. If you think back to my video on the Beach Bowl Galaxy, I talked about the genius design behind the swimming controls. The developers essentially given us two modes of control, something slower and more precise when we need to reposition ourselves, and something faster for when we just want to get on our way. The ice skating mechanic we see here functions in much the same way. If we want to take it slow, we can shuffle along in a way similar to many other 3D platform games. But if we're ready to turn the dial up a notch, all we need is a quick spin, and we're soaring across the ice like a mustachioed Tanya Harding. This completely flips the norms of ice levels. Usually we find ourselves with less control over the character, but in Super Mario Galaxy, we actually find ourselves with more. Skating along is fun in its own right, and I absolutely love how Mario's jump when skating is similar to that of a figure skater. Plus, did you know that if Mario crouches while he's skating, he'll start skating backwards? I only found out about this when I was making this video series. This game's been out for a million years. A minimum of beginner's ice level skating skills are needed here, as our first objective will be to catch a penguin. I'm sure on some level this is a throwback to the big penguin race mission on Cool Cool Mountain from Mario 64, and it's nice to see a similar format applied to a new structure. Interestingly, the penguin NPCs in Super Mario Galaxy are mostly found in tropical levels, like the Beach Bowl or Seaslide galaxies. Maybe it's just because that's what I'm used to, but for some reason they look much more natural in beach levels than in this one here. This penguin is the only one in this galaxy, so maybe the rest have decided to move on to somewhere more comfortable. Once the penguin is caught, we can move on to the main planet, which is one of the more open-ended environments in Super Mario Galaxy. There is a secret slide where we can grab a life mushroom, and an alternate route up to the second level, which is also a substantial shortcut, and an entire backside to the mountain. This pathway leads up to a secret star, but it's so fleshed out that it could easily have served as one of this galaxy's main missions. I actually think I'd prefer it to the real first mission, mostly because it uses the fire flower in a way that creates an interesting contrast to all the snow and ice around it. You know, like the name Freezeflame would imply. But for this series, we're only focusing on the main missions, so let's get back on track. The main planet here is divided up into 3 levels, and on the first one we have the introduction of the Ice Flower. The Ice Flower power-up has a strange history in the Mario series. This here is its first appearance in the mainline games, but it serves an entirely different look and function in every subsequent appearance. Here, Mario himself turns into ice, and all it does is let him ice skate on water or lava. Starting with New Super Mario Bros. Wii, it gives him a reversed color palette, and instead of any ice skating abilities, it lets him throw ice balls at enemies to freeze them. However, the introduction of the Ice Flower in a Mario game was actually as an item in Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. But that's not even the first appearance of the Ice Flower. It actually played a part in the manga Super Mario-kun, in a volume released all the way back in 1992. Now that's a storied history. And while we're here, I have to talk about Super Mario-kun. I feel like not that many Western Nintendo fans even know it exists. It's a Japanese manga that started in 1990 and covers the plots of basically every single Mario game, including spin-offs, in one continuous story. I'm serious, it has everything. It starts off on Super Mario World and features all the mainline Mario games like 64, Sunshine, Galaxy, 3D World, and Odyssey, but also the Paper Mario games, Mario Party, Luigi's Mansion, Mario Kart, New Super Mario Bros., Wario Land, Donkey Kong Country. It's insane. This Japan-only manga is the closest thing that the Mario series has ever had to an actual canon. I had known about it before, but I hadn't realized how extensive it was until I sat down to make this video. I first found out about it after seeing the Mario-kun costume in the original Mario Maker. I remember unlocking it and having to look up what it was immediately. I have to imagine most Western players had the same reaction I did when seeing it, which was, what in the world is that? But to go back to the Ice Flower in this game, my feelings on it mostly lead me to points of criticism. It offers a unique power and visually is really nice. However, it suffers from the same weakness that the Bob-ombs have, which you might remember me discussing back in the Battle Rock Galaxy video. When Mario grabs the Ice Flower, the effects of it last for 20 seconds. Now, I want you to think for a moment. Is that a long amount of time or a short amount of time? Well, the correct answer is it depends. What are you using it for? The problem with these timed power-ups like the Ice Flower and the Fire Flower is that they have to be a one-size-fits-all solution for the entire game. You can't have the duration of the powers last different lengths of time in different areas because that erases away consistency, which is something the player relies on in order to make decisions. So, because you have to keep the amount of time equal across the board, you're putting a major limitation on what you can do with the level design. Have the task we need to perform as Ice Mario last too long, and you're destroying every sense of tension, which is generally what you want a time limit to create. Have it last too short of a time, and it can lead to an overabundance of frustration, and you might end up with a task that only the most skilled players are able to complete. Even if the level designers are able to do a good job accommodating this strict 20-second time limit, they're still not able to work with the amount of flexibility they would have if this limit didn't exist. Super Mario Galaxy is a game that succeeds not because of its graphics or story or combat. It succeeds because of its level design, thanks to how creative the developers were able to be due to the gravity system. If I could go back and enter the mind of the game's director, Yoshiaki Koizumi, during the early planning stages of the game, I'd opt to keep the Ice and Fire Flowers, but without any time limits. It might seem like that would make them overpowered, but it would give the level designers freedom to better design the game around them. As they stand now, the Fire and Ice Flowers feel like complete afterthoughts compared to the ones that don't have time limits, like the Bee Mushroom and the Spring Mushroom. Both of those power-ups have levels designed entirely around the strengths they give Mario, and they're all the better for it. Even if there wasn't a time limit for these power-ups, there's still ways to place limitations on how far the player can bring them. We already revert back to normal Mario once we grab a Power Star, so you don't have to worry about players keeping forms in levels that they shouldn't. Spring Mario ends when we use a Launch Star, and Bee Mario loses his powers when he touches water, which the game cleverly utilizes in a couple of areas to get us back to our normal form when necessary. I'll talk more about this topic when we get to the Fire Flower, but I'll wrap up this portion by saying that the reason the Freezeflame Galaxy disappointed me when revisiting it is that these two items are the biggest instances of wasted potential in Super Mario Galaxy. Generally, power-ups are supposed to feel empowering, but I never look forward to using either flower here. When I have one, I always just try to get whatever task is asked of me done as quickly as possible, so I can move on to the better portions of the game. For all its flaws, I will say that the actual powers that the Ice Flower provides are really cool. Our first objective with it is to jump on these water spouts up to the second level, which is exactly how an item should work. It should let us do things that we can't otherwise do. However, we don't get to escape the problems the time limit creates for long, because if we don't time this next section right from the get-go, we're forced to backtrack and wait for the flower to reappear. This wouldn't be an issue if it came back right away and just reset the timer if we grabbed it again, but no, we've got to wait the full 20 seconds to retry. You see what I mean about 20 seconds being too long in some scenarios and too short in others? Once we get up to the third level of the mountain, we meet the galaxy's boss, Baron Burr. I will say, I like how Super Mario Galaxy constantly changes up which mission the boss will appear in from galaxy to galaxy. Some, like this one, are in the first mission, but others might be in the second or the third. There's not necessarily a correct placement for them, so I appreciate the variety that these mix-ups offer. The Ice Flower is needed to get up to him, and we can find one on the left side of the cave he's over top of. It's a smart way to have us use this level's item against the boss, even if it doesn't have any combat capabilities. Once we get up top, defeating him is really easy, as long as we don't get knocked off. I like how he's essentially a bigger version of the little ice enemies we've been dealing with on our way here, and he's defeated in the same basic way. Give him a spin, then a kick. If we don't jump over the shockwaves he creates, we'll be knocked down and have to repeat everything with the Ice Flower, but if we're able to avoid them, we can get him defeated pretty quickly. Now it's time to crank up the heat and head into the galaxy's next mission, Freezeflame's Blistering Core. We start off on the same planet as the last mission, but instead of chasing a penguin this time, we're collecting star chips. They're stuck in crystals, which isn't too unusual, but I like how there's a Goomba in one of the crystals too. I can't tell if the developers put it there to try and trick a player who might just be smashing every crystal they come across, or if they just did it to be funny. I'm leaning towards just being funny. Once we get all 5 star chips, we can send Mario to the main planet of this mission, the Lava Core. One thing you might notice right away is the wavy effect over the screen, as a way of showing just how hot it is in there. The same filter was used in Super Mario Sunshine, and I think it's a smart use of what's ultimately a simple effect. The music also takes on a more ominous tone, which matches the visuals and is reminiscent of Lethal Lava Land from Super Mario 64. One thing I want to point out is that the music in both the ice and the lava areas of this galaxy is actually the same song, but it's played in a different key or different instruments. Look, I don't know the first thing about music composition, but basically it's the same song, but different. Take a listen to this comparison and you'll know what I mean. The main enemy we'll encounter in this area are these urchins, which can only be defeated with the fire flower, or if we're feeling mischievous, we can trick them into falling into the lava on their own. This isn't easy to do, but it is satisfying and makes us feel like we're outsmarting the game. The main pathway isn't opened up yet, so first we have to make our way around to the side and then pick up the fire flower. Now, all my complaints about the ice flower also apply to the fire flower, and even more so, because unlike its chilly counterpart which was introduced here, the fire flower is a power-up with historic importance. All the way back to the original Super Mario Bros., it was the power-up, and only became more iconic since then. It played a major role in Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, appeared in the best 2 Paper Mario games, and has been an item in every Smash Bros. Game. That's an achievement only accomplished by items as symbolic as the Pokeball, or a barrel. This is the first appearance of the Fire Flower in a 3D Mario game, so you'd think it would be treated with the appropriate amount of reverence. But instead, the Fire Flower is reduced to a simple means to an end, a 20-second romp that you want to be over as soon as it begins. In trying to aim the fireball, we can never get it quite right, and only hit what we're intending to through sheer luck. I'm fully aware that throwing a projectile in 2D is far less complicated than in 3D, but something here just feels off. The way it bounces is too unpredictable, and if it hits anything other than flat ground, it could go any which way. What makes the Fire Flower so disappointing for me here is that there's such a wide gap between what it could have been and what it actually is. When we become Fire Mario for the first time in 3D, we should feel like we're ready to conquer the world. We should be throwing fireballs left and right, taking down all the enemies who were previously giving us trouble. We should feel as empowered as we do when we get it in the 2D Mario games. But that couldn't be further from what the experience of getting the Fire Flower in Super Mario Galaxy is. If we throw a fireball while running, it stops us in our tracks, which I want to note is something it doesn't do in the 2D games. When you combine this fact with the time limit, throwing all the fireballs we'd want to becomes completely impractical. With only 20 seconds each time we have it, we can't afford to waste any time lighting things up, because apparently Mario can't keep running as he throws anymore. So instead, we spend the majority of our time as Fire Mario sprinting to where we need to go, then just throwing 1 or 2 fireballs before the clock runs out. And the whole time we're doing that, we're treated to this music, which I find more and more grating as time goes on. I understand it acts as a countdown, but it doesn't need to sound this harsh and blaring. It reminds me of the underwater countdown music in the 2D Sonic games, which also isn't pleasant, but it's there to let Sonic know to get a move on or he'll drown. Just compare it to the Rainbow Star music in this same game. It's also music that serves as a timer, but it sounds so much more celebratory. And when it stops playing, we aren't thinking, oh thank God. The last piece I want to say about the Fire Flower is just to reiterate how much better the level design could have been if the time limit wasn't present. No other items in Super Mario Galaxy allow us to throw something, so it could have been used to create all sorts of interesting puzzles. What if we had to change the gravity on a planet while our fireball is bouncing along to get it to hit a switch? The possibilities are so numerous, especially for a design team as inventive as the one behind Super Mario Galaxy. So to see their creativity stifled by this is saddening. When flying over here, you might have noticed that the section we've been on so far has been on the bottom half of a sphere. So right here we flip up to the top portion, which is a neat little trick. The next objective is more the same, using the Fire Flower to light some torches, then we flip back onto the other side of the planet with some wall jumping. I like these tilting rocks in the next part, which really remind me of Lethal Lava Land. And then finally, to unlock the star, we take what we've learned about throwing fireballs and apply it to a moving platform, which is a decent way of increasing the complexity of a mechanic that the player is already familiar with. The final mission in this galaxy is titled Hot and Cold Collide, and it's the best one of the three because hot and cold actually collide. Right from the first planet, we can see it's a big departure from what we're used to, no longer being a peaceful icy donut, but now a cacophony of temperature-based chaos. It's a major change up from the last two missions, and one that comes on suddenly. I think if there had just been 1 or 2 balls of fire near this planet on the second mission, this would feel like a more natural progression. We'll spend the next portion of our time here on the hot and cold planet, which is divided into 2 halves. The first section is more reminiscent of the environment of the first mission, not just because it's a snowy area with icy cold water, but also because it's more open-ended. If we explore around, we can find a life mushroom and a 1-up. We unscrew this valve to make the wall drop down, and from there we move on to the fire side of the planet. One cool thing here is that each side has a rising and lowering tide, the cold side being with water, and the hot side being with lava. This is an awesome mechanic and demonstrates how you can have both sides of a coin in a level like this. The first thing we see on the hot side is the fire flower behind bars, which makes our goal immediately clear. There's a few secrets in the rocks that we can ground pound, but nothing as meaningful as on the cold side. We basically just want to grab the fire flower and then head back as fast as we can to light the torches. Now we come to the final section of this mission, and it's by far the most fun one. It's a straight shot to the star as Ice Mario, skating over lava. How Ice Mario is so cold he's able to freeze lava, I have no idea. Even if he is cold enough, wouldn't it just turn into rocks? Anyway, the ride to the star can be quite exhilarating, because the ice flower doesn't let us stop to catch our breath. There's spots for shortcuts and bonuses along the way, but even just going right for the star feels exciting enough, and it's gratifying to just jump right into it. This section is one I remembered clearly from my first playthrough all those years ago, and I'm happy to say it remains as one of my favorite parts of the game. But of course, that doesn't apply to the rest of the galaxy. To me, the whole thing reeks of unrealized potential, and doesn't adequately deliver on the premise that it puts forth. You'd think that the Freezeflame galaxy would be composed completely of missions like this third one, which combines elements of traditional snow and lava levels into something entirely unique. But aside from the last mission, it feels like 2 leftover galaxies glued together in no beneficial way. It's puzzling because Super Mario Galaxy already has a dedicated lava level with the Melty Molten Galaxy, so this could have easily been expanded into the dedicated snow level. I do also have to mention the Shiverburn Galaxy from Super Mario Galaxy 2, which uses the same concept as Freezeflame. Whether it delivers on this concept better or not, I can't really say, because I haven't played Super Mario Galaxy 2 since it released, so I don't remember too much about it. But I will say that its inclusion says that maybe the developers realized they didn't quite nail it with Freezeflame. Nintendo is absolutely not one to repeat ideas, so the fact that they do so with this one speaks volumes. So maybe one day we'll get Super Mario Galaxy 3 with the Icy Hot Galaxy, and the boss fight will be Shaquille O'Neal. And look, I realize that I might be laying on the criticism a bit heavy here, but the reason these flaws stick out so much is because they're in a game with an otherwise very high standard of quality. If you've watched any of my other videos in this series, you'll understand that I believe in most other areas, this game comes as close to 3D platforming perfection as possible. I'm only so critical of this galaxy and the power-ups in it because I know the development team could have done better. But I suppose it's time to give you my revised top 10 snow levels list to see if the Freezeflame Galaxy still meets the cut, or if it doesn't, what might take its place. You know it won't be any higher up than it was before, so to build up anticipation, I'm going to give it to you in the opposite order, from number 1 to number 10. Number 1. Freezeezy Peak from Banjo-Kazooie. Number 2, Cliffside Slide from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Number 3, Cliffhanger from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That's the 2009 one. Number 4, Unnamed Snowy Mountain Area from Death Stranding. Number 5, Mount Wario from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Number 6, Cool Cool Mountain from Super Mario 64. Number 7, Hot Springs from Ape Escape. Number 8, Shiver City from Paper Mario. Number 9, Snow Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey. And number 10, Cool Edge Act 1 from Sonic Unleashed. So, goodbye to the Freezeflame Galaxy. It lost the number 7 spot and everything below it shifted up by 1, with Cool Edge taking number 10. In that, you go from running through snowy fields to sliding down icy tunnels in a sled, and there's not 1, but 2 whales, plus a plethora of penguins. Freezeflame only has 1 penguin. Frankly, I'm embarrassed I overlooked it in the first place. And as with any Sonic level, the music is fantastic. I'd add that to my holiday playlist. But as much fun as I've had learning about how I don't like something as much as I previously did, it's time to move on. In the next video in this series, we'll be kicking chickens, surfing on the sand, and contaminating planets with non-indigenous fauna in the dusty Dune galaxy. I hope you'll join me there.